Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Yider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network. More than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan. I'm here for 3 hours every week talking about the great outdoors, the history and tradition of hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping and wildlife issues and conservation issues and even some wild game cooking every week for 3 hours, and I've been here for a long time. Long time. Longer than some of you have been around. There's a certain amount of satisfaction in saying that, though. But I'm so glad you're with us this week here as we celebrate the history and tradition of the outdoor lifestyle. And can you believe it that it's August now? It's August, the last kind of unofficial month of summer, although for many people, you don't even get a full month because the kids go back to school, everything starts to fire back up, and it really doesn't feel like summertime anymore, does it? It used to be a few years ago, and for many years before that, that this first couple of weeks of August to me meant one thing: heading over to Lake Michigan and fishing kings, fishing salmon. Boy, we had a lot of fun doing that. I used to go over there with my mom and dad. My dad was an avid big water angler. He taught me how to fish for kings. In fact, I barely remember, my first salmon fishing trip on Lake Michigan was about 1967 or 68. We fished out of Manistee. We fished with my aunt and uncle in a fiberglass ski boat, trolling flatfish on braided line, because that's all anybody knew how to do. And we caught a couple of nice kings. In fact, somewhere online, I have pictures of, I think, roughly 10-year-old Mike Avery in my baseball shirt, my Little League baseball shirt, holding up 2 kings, one in each arm. So I didn't have a chance, did I? And for many, many years, that's what we did. I absolutely loved it. We'd go over to Muskegon State Park, camp at Muskegon State Park, launch at the launch they had right there, fish a couple of times a day, come back, cook up fish, sleep there on the shore of Muskegon Lake, head back out in the morning. We also fished, of course, Ludington, Manistee, Frankfort, and it was just so much fun. And one of the best things about it was that time spent on the water with my mom and dad. My dad was a cop for 35-ish years. And because of that, because of what he did, he wasn't a real open guy. He was kind of guarded. And he didn't talk about a lot of things until we got on the water. In those hours trolling salmon on Lake Michigan, I got to know my dad better than any other time when he was here on Earth, because he relaxed, he opened up, and he talked. And that was wonderful. Now, since he's gone, I really haven't spent that much time on Lake Michigan fishing kings. To be honest with you, some small part of me says it's just not right to go out there and do it without him. I'm sure he would say, hey, get your rear end over there and go fishing. But I did have an experience this week that kind of brought this whole concept of outdoor tradition, fishing with family, sharing good times on the water. I had a chance to fish with my 2 youngest grandkids on Saginaw Bay for walleye. Now, my 2 youngest grandkids are 16 years old. Addison and Carter. Addison, who is just crazy busy with softball, tournaments every weekend. When she doesn't have tournaments, she's got practice. She's tied up all the time. She called me early in the week. She said, Grandpa, Grandpa, what are you doing Thursday? I don't know, Addison. What do you want to do? Can we go fishing? Now, let me tell you something. When your 16-year-old granddaughter calls you and says, Grandpa, can we go fishing? You find a way to go fishing. You drop everything else you're doing and you go fishing. I said, Addison, is it okay if Carter comes with us too? She said, sure. So I took the two grandkids out on Saginaw Bay fishing for walleye. It was kind of a rough day. It wasn't, the waves were kind of rough. And we had a lot of weeds. So it was, I had to work, but we got some fish. And man, was it fun. And I got thinking that my dad, if he was looking down on that day, was smiling. Because I was smiling. It was just so much fun. And then the next day, another wonderful experience. This time, not with family, but with some really good friends. Art Lewis, Mid-Michigan radio icon, had been talking to me all summer. Said, Mike, I'd really like to get out in the Angler Quest and go fishing with you. I said, Art, I'd love to make this happen. Because Art's not a fisherman, but he's open to new experiences. Dixie Dave, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, had also, now that he's sold the restaurant and somewhat retired, although he hates to admit it, had time to go fishing now too. So I got these two guys, I got our schedules coordinated, and I went out on Saginaw Bay in my beloved skinny water, which is holding fish very well for this late in the year. Fished with Art Lewis and Dixie Dave. And for once, and I think this may be the first time this has ever happened to me, I was actually the youngest guy on the boat. Let's just say there were a lot of years of experience on the water that day. And there were a lot of good stories and a lot of fish. And it was just so much fun, again, to take good friends out on the water in a completely non-stressful environment, catching fish and having fun. And that's what it's all about. I did find it interesting. Now, think about this. When you're fishing with wild game chef Dixie Dave Minar, and Dave has a reputation for trying to figure out how to eat anything you can catch or shoot, we got a bunch of nice walleye. We also got a couple smallmouth. Of course, we got a sheephead. We got a catfish. And we got a long-nosed gar. Now, if Dave wouldn't have been on the boat, the smallie would have gone back, the catfish would have gone back, the sheephead would have definitely gone back, and that gar wouldn't even have come in the boat. Dave says, I'm keeping them. I'm going to cook those things up. So I can't wait for the third hour of this week's show. As we wrap up the show, I got to find out how Dave cooked up that long-nosed gar. I've pulled the Angler Quest, but not for the season, just for a couple of hours. I had to pull it to get the tubes power washed. There in the marina where it sits, and I'm in a beautiful marina near the mouth of the river. I really like it a lot, but we don't get much water flow, and so the tubes get crudted up. They get junk growing on them. They get grass growing on them. It looks like grass, like seaweed, and you can't get that stuff off. So I pull it once a year. This year I'm pulling it a little bit late because it's the first time I've had an opportunity to, and get those tubes power washed. And there's something strangely rewarding about that. To take those tubes that are all crudted up and then make them nice and silver and smooth again. What else? Next, well, this Wednesday coming up, the 9th, I think it is. I've got another Wednesday night live with Amy Trotter of MUCC. I like to check in with Amy about once a quarter and see how things are going on in their world, see how things are going on in Lansing. She has a unique insight into the inner workings of Lansing, the politics of Lansing, and and how that affects our hunting and fishing passions and pursuits. So look forward to that the following week, the 16th. We're going to be live for Wednesday Night Live at the Michigan Brand Meats plant in Bay City. Now, I did one of these several years ago, and people really enjoyed it. A behind-the-scenes look at Michigan Brand on how they make all those wonderful products. By the way, I did get my bear brats back from Michigan Brand for that from that bear I shot in Ontario early in the summer. Oh, man, are they good. Just as you would expect. Oh, they're outstanding. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine show, after the break, I'm going to talk with Devin LaFond. Devin is a houndsman who lost one of his dogs in a wolf attack in the UP. How many times have we heard this story? We're going to talk to Devin about that and more. Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews will wrap up the hour. They're getting ready for their big outdoor weekend. Hour number 2, Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle, talking about trolling, talking about that well-respected Michigan-based family-owned company. Nick Green of MUCC. We'll get a little preview of what Amy's going to talk about. And in our third hour, Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots. It is the fall food plot planting season. We've had some rain. We'll talk to Rich about that. And then we'll wrap up the show, as I say, with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar talking about that fishing trip and how he cooked up those sea creatures we caught from Saginaw Bay. My name is Mike Avery. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Lots coming up this week on Outdoor Magazine. I am so glad you're here with us. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Sandusky, WMIC 660 AM, 95.3 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain on WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Killer Food Plots. You know, it is August now. It is the time to start getting serious about those food plots. It's brought to you by Killer Food Plots, Michigan-based, family-owned Killer Food Plots. Coming up in our third hour, Rich will join us to talk more about this process. But I'm telling you, if you are new to food plotting and you want to know how to get started, Killer Food Plots can help you out. If you are a veteran food plotter just looking for a little advice or maybe some product or some seed, Killer Food Plots can help you out as well. Check them out online at killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. I want to talk now with a guy who has a terrible story, and it's a story we've heard before. Devin LaFond is a houndsman. He runs hounds in the Upper Peninsula for bears, and I'm just going to bring him on and let him tell the story. Hey, Devin, welcome to the show. I appreciate your time. How are you today?
I'm doing well. You?
I'm doing good. Devin, tell us about you. What's your background? What do you do? And tell me about the dogs and being a houndsman.
Well, I started getting into hound hunting in high school. I got a little red bone and that started running coon. And then I moved up here to the UP. I grew up down by Alpena. Moved up here to the UP and got into bobcats actually first. Started out with one dog, had a red dick. And then I met up with some guys out running bobcats, and they said, come along bear hunting. Well, never really been bear hunting before, so I said, why not, right?
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I got 3 dogs. So that's kind of my background.
So not everybody's going to understand this process, this activity. Bear hunting with dogs. I mean, you're not actually hunting right now. You're training dogs and you're running bears, right?
Correct. Yep.
What is that process? Describe that to me.
So basically, this time of year you can't bait yet, and we just drive around and look for a track, or you try to rig one. And rigging is where they smell a bear that walked across the road or nearby, and you basically turn your dog loose and let them figure that track out. to get to wherever the bear is at. And then we call it jumped, and that's when the dogs actually are fairly close to the bear, and they are basically following the bear through the woods now until hopefully it gets up into a tree. That's basically the gist of it.
So you tree the bear, and you leave, and the bear comes back on the tree and wanders off on his way.
Yep, exactly.
How many dogs do you normally let out on a, what do you call it, a chase?
Yeah, I mean, you can call it a chase, I guess.
What do you call it, Devin? I don't know the word. Is there a word for it?
Well, I mean, I guess I had never thought about a word to use.
Let's call it a chase for our conversation. So how many dogs are involved in that usually?
Well, typically when I first start out, because you don't want to dump a bunch of dogs down and just have chaos, I start out with 1 to 2 dogs that are good with cold trailing. And that is where they're basically trying to figure out where this bear's at. And that's how I start out. And then once we get to the jumped stage of the chase, we try to get in where the bear crosses a road and kind of tuck in right behind them and put more dogs down. And in Michigan, you're only allowed 8 dogs per chase.
So you had a situation here, I think it was last week. Walk me through that day from the time you guys got out in the woods.
All right, so we got up before daylight, went up where we hunt, and we're driving around. You can't let dogs down until daybreak. So we basically get there around daylight, and then we get the dogs all ready. We put them up on what's called a rig rack, and they stand on top of the dog box. And we drive around, and they ended up rigging one. So I let my main dog, Fern, down, and she full trailed for a little while and got it jumped right away. It wasn't a couple hundred yards. So at that point, it crossed the road right away, and the guy I hunt with put his dog down, and I ended up trying to get cheese on it right away, but for whatever reason, he was way too excited and didn't know which way to go. So Fern and my buddy's dog was in on the chase right away. And so we go around to another road where they crossed again, and I was able to put cheese down at this point. And now my buddy's dog was kind of falling behind a little bit. So the next road crossing, we were too slow to get more dogs in on it. We ended up picking his dog up, and the only 2 dogs in on this race was Fern and Cheese, my 2 dogs.
And do these dogs have transmitters on them, or how do you keep track of them?
Oh, yeah, I got a tracking system. I use a Garmin Alpha 100.
So you can follow their progress through the woods?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can see every step that they take, I mean, within a couple feet.
Okay, so you got 2 dogs in there. They're trailing a bear. You guys are still out in your trucks. What else happened?
So where we hunt is a really big area, and the roads are not that great. So they kind of start heading south, and I ask Ed, my partner there, to start going around one way, and that would be off to the west. So he gets around, and I notice that my dogs are cutting really hard to the east now. So I go around another way, and Fern and Cheese kind of separate a little bit. I mean, it's not uncommon for the dogs to separate a little bit, especially when they're not in shape yet. It's kind of early in the season. So as they're coming around to where I'm at, it's kind of getting close to a really big block of private. This guy owns like 5,000 acres, and I don't typically like going into private ground just because it's not welcoming usually.
Sure.
So I try to stay away. Sometimes, obviously, you just can't help it. It just happens. But I'm over here on the east side. Ed's still making his way around on the west. And Fern is getting really close, within a couple hundred yards. So I start blowing my horn, trying to turn the bear back west. That way it keeps it away from that private.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the bear across the road anyway, and I went and picked up my first dog, Fern. And Cheese is coming along. He's, half a mile away. Next thing, he's 800 yards, and he makes a really hard left hook. And then he jumps right back on the track. And I was like, well, that's a little odd. And then he pops up as treed. And when I picked Fern up, she was still trailing. I didn't see the bear, and I didn't see any tracks at the time. So I guess I didn't know if the bear did turn and she was just kind of screwed up right there in the road or what happened. So I sit there and I wait actually for about a half hour. And Cheese is still treed, not moving. I can't hear him, but that's not uncommon. So we start walking in. We get in a couple hundred yards away, still can't hear him. So I'm kind of assuming he's got one treed in the rocks maybe. Then we get really close, within 100 yards, and I still can't hear him. So I'm looking at my buddy and saying, this isn't good. Something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of walk down a cliff, and on the GPS, it shows I'm 50 feet away, and I don't see him. And I can't hear him. So I holler out for him a few times, and nothing. I finally caught a glimpse of him, and he's just laying there, dead. I never got to see the wolves, but from prior experiences and stuff like that, I know 100% it was a wolf kill.
Has this ever happened to you before?
No, not with wolves.
But yet this is something, I've talked to several guys who have lost dogs to wolves. Did you know there were wolves in the areas, Devin? In the area?
Well, the problem with up there is there's not much sand, so to find a track is really, really hard. There's wolves everywhere in the UP, so it's kind of a hope you get lucky kind of day.
Yeah.
And I did not know that there was wolves actively right there where we were.
If you would have known that, would you have just gone somewhere else?
Yeah, I've done that in the past. It's not worth losing a dog over.
So when you got to your dog, is it male or female?
It was a male.
He was already
Male
gone?
walker.
He was gone?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Well, and I hear, and not to get too gruesome, but I hear stories, and these wolves are not, they're not gentle.
No, I guess you could say this one was fairly gentle, but at the same time, he crushed between the neck and his shoulder blades, crushed the spinal cord there, and crushed his head.
Hmm.
I mean, they weren't tore apart, but he was definitely killed quickly.
Any sense of, it had to be multiple wolves, wouldn't it, or not necessarily?
I mean, my walker is only about 60 pounds, so that's no match to a 150-pound wolf. I mean, these animals are made for killing, so they know how to grab another animal and kill it quickly.
Yeah, that's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Devin, hang tight. I got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show, but I want to talk more about this story and talk more about just wolves in the UP in general, if you got a few more minutes for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, appreciate that. We're talking with Devin LaFond. Devin is a houndsman from the UP who lost a dog to, he thinks, wolves, and I got no reason to think anything other than that, right? On a bear training exercise in the UP. And we hear this story. I don't want to say you hear it all the time, but you hear about it a lot. And I've talked to, I think, probably 4 or 5 different people who have lost dogs to wolves, and it's certainly a shame. I mean, you got to understand the relationship between houndsmen and their dogs. It's, you love your family pet. Well, these guys love their hounds. And to have something like this happen is pretty tough. So I appreciate Devin sharing his story. And we'll hear more about that after the break coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Versa Skins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Why buy a bunch of different sets of hunting clothes when you can buy one good quality set and snap on and zip on an outer liner, an outer shell of a different camo pattern? I mean, when you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, of course this makes great sense. Well, nobody was doing it until VersaSkins owner Paul Perrone came up with the concept, and now he's doing a great job. The website is versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. And if you need big sizes, 4X, 5X, even bigger, VersaSkins can help you out. And I need to verify this with Paul, but I am quite sure they will be at the Woods and Water Outdoor Weekend coming up in Imlay City the first weekend after Labor Day. So if you want to see these things in person, that's the place to go. If you want to see them online, go to the website versaskins.com. That's versaskins.com. Talking now with Devin LaFond. Devin is a houndsman from the UP who lost one of his dogs in a wolf attack last week. And Devin, you didn't see the wolves, but man, there's nothing else it could have been, is there?
No, and there's not many things that have silver hair in the UP either.
So you saw hair?
Because, yep, there's hair in the area where the attack took place.
So what now? You're not going to give up running dogs, right?
No, I don't plan to ever, no.
So how do you avoid this in the future?
We got to get rid of them. That's about the easiest way. But honestly, I don't think we'll ever truly get rid of them or avoid them. It's going to be an occurrence. And until they're scared of us, it's going to be more of a common occurrence.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there, because I have hunted wolves in Ontario, and up there, the wolves know they're not top of the food chain. They know they've been hunted. They know they get hunted. So they have a real fear of humans. If they see you, hear you, smell you, or think you've been around, they take off. But the wolves in the UP don't have that fear, do they?
Not at all. Actually, my boss's wife just texted me yesterday saying that she's seen a wolf just trotting down the highway. I seen one a month ago, twice in 1 week. It was a black one, so they really stick out, and it had a collar on. If you go back 10 years, you never seen wolves on the road. And how often do you even see a coyote on the road?
Mm-hmm.
Hardly ever. It's becoming more and more of an occurrence. And I got lots of friends that are in logging, and I get stories all the time of seeing wolves and hearing about the problems that they're doing out in the woods. I mean, when a harvester comes in and lays down a bunch of brush, the rabbits like to go in there and eat the tops out of the brush. Well, these wolves, they come through, and two of them will be going through the brush, basically pushing the rabbits out to a road or a skid road, and there'll be another wolf there grabbing the rabbits. And the harvester's right there cutting the trees down and making all this racket, and these wolves are there. They don't care. That's what's scary.
Yeah, just having wolves in the area isn't the problem. It's the fact that, like you said earlier, they just don't have fear of man.
Right.
It's hard for downstaters to wrap their brain around this because we don't have to deal with it. People say, "Oh, I saw a wolf." No, you didn't. You saw a big coyote. We don't have wolves down here like you guys have up there.
Yeah, you'll know when you see a wolf. There is no mistaking it. I mean, the best dog to compare it to is like a German Shepherd, but even then, it's bigger than them.
Yeah. So this is a terrible tragedy, but you're early into your training season right now. Other than that, are you off to I hate to say a good start, but things were going well up until then?
Yeah, we were running bear just about every time we go out, if not 2 races a day. And overall, it's been good. The dogs are learning. We got a lot of puppies this year, so I kind of expected it to be a off year, but overall, we're doing well.
Race. That's the word I was thinking of, not chase. Race. Thank you for that. It's kind of a social thing too, isn't it? I mean, you get a bunch of people together. You really don't have to be quiet. You can. It's people who aren't houndsmen, and I'm not. Don't have a real good sense for the experience, the camaraderie.
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, you just grab a cooler, you fill it up with popping water and food, and you go out, you run around all day. I mean, you're beating up trucks and laughing. What more could you ask for?
Have you been out since that day?
Nope, that happened on Saturday. That Sunday, I didn't bother. I was just disgusted.
Sure.
And then last weekend, I was actually busy and couldn't go out. But this weekend, I plan on going.
All right, Devin. Good luck to you. Sorry this happened to you, but I sure appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right, Devin LaFond telling the story of losing one of his hounds to what had to be wolves, right? Couldn't really be anything else. And I've heard this story from several houndsmen. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, and I'm sure he wants to talk about their big outdoor weekend coming up in only like 5 weeks now. Then in hour number 2, Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle and Nick Green. Oh, it's the Hour of Nicks in hour 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM, also WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. And north of the bridge in Marquette, WDMJ 1320 AM. It's the month of August. I have a hard time believing that. I bet Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews is watching the summertime fly by as well. He's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Tom, can you believe it's August already?
Oh, it's incredible, Mike, how fast it goes. But that's all right. We're pounding away, and I think we're ready. We're getting closer to being ready. We're never perfectly ready until that last minute until we open that Friday at 3 o'clock. So, yeah, and even then we're still making adjustments on the fly. So
ready
of the beast.
Ready for what, Tom? What have you got coming up?
Well, we just got we're going to invite about 15,000 people up to Inlet City, the Eastern Michigan Fairgrounds, and hopefully we can celebrate the outdoors with them. And we got a great show lined up for September 8th, 9th, and 10th. And it's full of a lot of retail vendors, a lot of clubs and organizations, and some great educational opportunities. And we got some great seminars. It's got some entertainment this year with the Paul Bunyan Lumberjack Show. So a little something for everything, for everyone, I should say.
Well, and you guys have been doing this for a couple of years, too.
We have. This will be the 37th one. Well, although we counted the COVID one, we had to cancel as a 35th, but that's all right. So, yeah, Mike, we 37 years at it, and it's still going strong, and we're going to keep riding it and hope everybody has a good time and enjoys coming for sure.
You know, you mentioned COVID and having to take a year off. I remember our conversations. That was a little, unnerving for a lot of reasons, but you never quite know, right, after taking a year off, what it's going to be like when you come back.
Exactly right. You know, at the time when we had to make that cancellation because of we thought that was the worst thing in the world. But honestly, coming back off the COVID the following year, there was so much speculation of, well, are people going to come? What show is going to be like now after having a year off? You know, what protocol? What happens if we get another can't do a show again, or what if they change the regulations? So that second year was probably the toughest of all 37 we've done for those reasons, just people unsure. And then, of course, we've talked before, of course, the supply link just went crazy, and so many of our vendors didn't have product lost so much of their help, didn't have help. So that year afterwards was the toughest. But I think that's all behind us now. I think we all feel real comfortable, and last year was a real well-attended show, and we're hoping for the same thing this year. And we're going to do our best to keep it going.
Tom, what's your sense of the state of the outdoor industry here in Michigan? You're plugged into this. You deal with a lot of people. You talk with a lot of people. Is it strong? Is there optimism? Is there trepidation? How do you characterize it?
On our part, we always see the optimism. We always see the positive. But I know on the other side, and I see those reports, I've seen the latest surveys that maybe hunting's losing a little bit of support nationwide. Obviously, the Midwest, we're still strong, and the survey shows that. But to me, it just seems so positive on our end that you seldom see anything negative. It's hard not to be optimistic, and you want to keep this growing. And it just seems such a surge with the youth going on in the outdoors that I can't see anything negative about that at all. So if we can keep that going, it's kind of a little bit preaching to the choir, as always. Everybody we talk to loves the outdoor usually, and so we get the total optimistic view, and we want to stay positive. Absolutely.
And one of the things I love about your show is it's something I preach to the choir all the time about, is this history and tradition of the outdoor lifestyle. There is no better example of that than your yearly annual outdoor weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of what we want to do. Just make it fun. It's a little more difficult now that the DNR's moved the youth hunt up on that weekend, but we've got Friday, and we're going to do some fun things, and we're hoping that after you got a day in on Saturday or Sunday, you can make it to the show before or after those kids get out there. But yeah, we tried for years to gear it to the youth, and we don't charge anybody under 12 to get in, and it's an opportunity to see all those things. Like I said, we get such great organizations and clubs out there that you can stop by and talk to anybody from, somebody that's from the trapping club, from a bow club, from a high school shooting group, so you can see it all. And not to downplay fishing, because we got some fantastic fishing vendors there, and we've got even fly casting demonstrations going on at the show. So you can see all those things and take part or participate or learn. So yeah, that's one of the greatest aspects of the outdoor weekend for sure.
Well, Tom, you and I will talk again before then. I'll send people to the website, woods-n-waternews.com. And you have a website just for the show. What is that?
Yeah, there's outdoorweekend.net.
Outdoorweekend.net. All right, Tom, good luck. We'll talk again soon. That's Tom Campbell of Woods-n-Waternews, outdoorweekend.net, also woods-n-waternews.com. And don't forget about this little monthly publication they put out, too, Michigan's premier outdoor publication, Woods and Water News. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, talking about another outdoor Michigan icon, offshore tackle with Nick DeShano, then Nick Green of MUCC.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. And as I say every week, I think if you can, the best way to listen to this show is on your local radio station. You get your local news and weather and sports, even your local, maybe there's a sale or something you want to take advantage of. So Outdoor Magazine Radio is the primary way to listen to the content of this program. If you can. If you can't, if your local affiliate doesn't carry all 3 hours of the show, or if you live in some part of our state not covered by the broadcast signal, and what a shame that would be, what a shame that is, isn't it nice to know that there's a podcast version of the show available? You can hear and it's the same content. It's the same show. If you hear it on a radio station, a broadcast station, it's the radio show. If you hear it online or download it, it's the podcast version. You can hear the podcast or download the podcast or stream the podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, on my Facebook page, on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, Deezer, Odyssey, and even on YouTube. Now, I know it's a radio show, but I put it on YouTube as well. I do like podcasting, though. In fact, each month I produce podcasts for some of my partners, my advertising partners, including Polar Craft Boats, Primal Outdoors, Angler Quest Boats, and Offshore Tackle. And when we're done recording this week's radio show, we will record this month's Offshore Tackle podcast, this time around with Mark Romanak of Fishing 411. That is certainly one that you will want to listen to. In fact, the Offshore podcast is the most popular podcast that I do. Speaking of podcasting, we just had a little bit of a milestone the other day, too. The podcast version of the Outdoor Magazine radio show has been downloaded more than 1 million times. That's like 6 zeros, right? That's a lot of downloads. I do appreciate that. I would not be able to do this without your support. If you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show, and I do certainly appreciate it. I also appreciate the partnership and the friendship of many of my long time, I've been blessed to do this long enough that I've established relationships with companies that have gone on for a long time. I love to work with Michigan-based family-owned companies. Offshore Tackle is one of them. I've been working with Offshore long time. Bruce DeShano, who started Offshore, a member of the Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, just a great guy. His son, Nick, another great guy, is at the helm of Offshore these days, and is with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Nick, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Great, Mike. It's good to talk with you.
Hey, it was nice to fish with you and Ari, too, with Brad Dupuy of Angler Quest a few weeks ago for a Wednesday Night Live. That was a riot.
Oh, I had a blast. I knew you had the opportunity to go out, and I love fishing with spoons. I don't do it. I get a chance to do it often. So, between fishing with you and Brad and taking my son along and getting some spoon time in, that one's a hard one to say no to, that's for sure.
Well, and we got the full experience. We got fish, we got to promote Angler Quest, we got to promote Offshore, we did the live thing, and we got caught in a storm. I mean, it was the full Saginaw Bay experience.
Absolutely. I don't think I can't remember. I may be that wet when my dad and I used to fish the MWT back in the 90s. I think maybe that was close to being that wet. But yeah, there's something about, a fishing trip. It's one thing when things are beautiful and all that, but you seem to remember those days where you just kind of come in and yeah, that was an experience for sure. But hey, we got in ahead of the nasty part of the storm anyway. So we got everything we needed to do, and it was a great day for sure. And speaking of experiences, you guys just got back from a great trip to Alaska. Yeah, I could probably fill a whole week's worth of shows up just talking about Alaska. So a warning to anybody, if you ask me how Alaska is, you might have to sit down and have a cup of coffee because it takes a while. It was a pretty amazing trip. It was everything people say about Alaska and more. And all I got to say is if anybody can get the opportunity to go, just go, especially outdoors people and a lot of Michiganders here, we're flatlanders. So just to see the mountains, it's just an awesome place to be. I love Michigan. I absolutely love it. But I've made 2 trips to Alaska, and I can say without a doubt it is the most beautiful place I have ever seen. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were hiking up in the mountains, and it just to stand there and the smells, that's the stuff you can't see in pictures, and pictures don't do it justice, like everybody says. But just to go out there and take a deep breath of that mountain air, you can smell the little flowers or fruits or whatever a little sweetness is, and it's its own world, that's for sure.
Did you do any fishing while you were there, Nick, or did you just take a break from work and just be the tourist?
We were just touring. I'd definitely like to get up there and do some fishing. Something like that. You know, it would be either have to spend a month up there. We were 2 weeks, and 2 weeks are good for just touring what we wanted to do. And especially for our first trip, my dad's been up there, well, a couple times bear hunting and then a couple times as a tourist. So he's seen a lot of the stuff up there. But for me to get my feet wet and kind of lines up to know what I want to do different or do more next time. And I'd definitely like to take a fishing trip up there, but I think I would want to make it where that's all you're doing is going on a fishing trip, or I said, or take a month and put a week aside for just fishing.
Would if I was fishing there, would I see offshore products, or are you primarily a Great Lakes company?
You know, it was funny. We're in Juneau in the local Ace Hardware store, and we're looking through, and they got fishing. There's guys trolling. There's people trolling. They troll for salmon, the chum salmon we're in, which is a different strain of salmon than we have. I guess they're not really good for eating. They're more of, they kind of grind them up. Which I've never heard of them, to tell you the truth. So they do some salmon fishing. A lot of boats up there have downriggers on it, and I think it's just a one rod because you don't see a lot of big spreads. So we're in the Ace Hardware store, and we're looking on the shelves, and there's our OR10, our planer board releases, and our downrigger releases are on there, and pretty cool to go all the way up in some place like that and see your product hanging on the shelf. So, but yeah, it's not a lot, but they definitely use some of the stuff up there.
Oh, that is very cool. And the story of offshore is a great story.
Yep. Yeah, it started back in 1981. I think my dad was up here in 78. Power plant worker for Detroit Edison, and loved fishing when he was younger and coming up with his dad, and ended up getting right, when the salmon were hot here on Lake Huron, when they were just starting to get going good, and started the charter boat fishing, and I can remember when I was a little kid, about my son's age, younger than him even, we're gluing metal alligator pads on metal alligator clips for our downrigger release, and next thing you know, we're making them out of plastic and developing the planer board, and it's been quite the ride. And it's neat for me to be able to see it all the way through, being able to see from when we first started doing it to where we are now. So it's pretty amazing how far it's come.
When you look back on things, timing often plays a role, and your dad's timing was pretty good with the salmon fishery coming on.
Oh, everything all the way through is just perfect. The salmon fishing was coming on. And he was a pretty good fisherman, so he got a hold of it, and him and a couple partners, Larry Hartwick and Bill Sturm, and they got together, and then the three of them were pretty deadly on the lake out here for a while. So you put that talent for it, and then the business sense that he had, and it just worked out great. And our planer boards, we started that in the early 90s as the professional walleye tour was really taking off, and guys were starting to troll more, and again, like you said, everything was perfect timing, and that's pretty much the key to everything. If you're going to be successful, you got to have the right time and the right place for it.
And partner with the right people. And I always say every month on the Offshore podcast that you guys at Offshore, you're very particular who you partner up with. Like your pro staffers. If somebody's got offshore on their boat or on their shirt, they're going to be cream of the crop because, again, you're pretty picky.
Yep. Yeah, we are. We have a great group. We've had other companies that would a lot bigger companies than us, call and ask about so-and-so, or, and if pretty much if they seen they were on our staff, then it was a good chance that that was a pretty good recommendation for them. But yeah, we've got some great people and along the way, and it's just pretty neat to look back and see all the people we've got to work with, and how many Hall of Fame anglers and personalities like yourself. I mean, you were one of our first. I think we were with you even before. I think we might have met Mark Romanek through you. I'm not sure.
now we're going way back.
Yeah. So.
Well, hang tight, Nick. We got to take a break here. We're talking with Nick DeShano of Offshore Tackle. Offshore is known as your leaders in trolling technology. That's a slogan. It's a motto, but it's also In my mind, it's true, but we've got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk more with Nick about trolling. When to use big boards, when to use the small boards, and how to catch more fish and have more fun while you're at it. The website is offshoretackle.com. That's offshoretackle.com. We talked about the Offshore Podcast. You can hear that every month at the website, offshoretackle.com. A lot of great video on the website. Of course, a list of their products, but more importantly, how to use them. Offshore is real big into education. Making a great product and then showing you how to use it. So I think that's pretty cool. Again, the website, offshoretackle.com, offshoretackle.com. The DeShano family, the family behind Offshore, Nick DeShano, the guy at the helm these days. We'll take a break and continue our conversation with Nick right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. And you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Linwood Beach can be your year-round Saginaw Bay fishing destination and your Mid-Michigan tracker and Angler Quest and Polar Craft headquarters. For more information, check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com, linwoodbeachmarina.com. I can't say enough about Linwood Beach. Great facilities, great location, great people, great service. linwoodbeachmarina.com. I was recently... Well, I've been out there a couple of times, but on one recent trip out of Linwood Beach, it was for a Wednesday night live with Brad Dupuy of Angler Quest Boats and Nick and Ari DeShano of Offshore Tackle. It was a lot of fun, and it was a great on-the-water demonstration of how effective, Nick, your OR-12s can be. Why is it that trolling day in and day out, different bodies of water, different species, is such a productive way to fish?
You just cover so much more water. You really see it, and with the open water in Saginaw Bay, the fish get spread out. And the crappie fishing and a couple of the lakes that we've been to is a good example. Like they go down to Grenada Lake, and in the spring the fish are up in the beds and they're tight, and people jig for them and cast for them. And this is before live scope stuff too. And then the fish would go down into the open water and roam around, and people would just quit crappie fishing in the summertime because they didn't know how to catch these fish that are they're not schooled up real tight, and they're just kind of roaming around. Whereas they learned how to troll and pull planer boards, and it just widened their path out, and they just covered so much more water. They started picking up some more fish. So I like it. It's effective. It's fun. It's good because you can take anybody out with you. You can take your family. You can take people that have never fished before. They can see the flag going down on the board or the fish hitting the board, and they can be a little bit more involved than if you were having to jig or cast or do some technique, where it really takes some technique to catch the fish and feel the bite and stuff like that. So
are the salmon...
I just think it's a great presentation.
Are the salmon folks over on Lake Michigan, are they using your products too?
Oh, yeah. Yep. They use the mag boards quite a bit for pulling the big coppers, 3 to 600 feet of copper and the steel lines out there. And they're running the 12s for anything less than that. And of course our downrigger releases are still pretty popular. The OR8, we originally made that as a heavy tension saltwater release. That's the red one. But that's turned more and more, especially with the big meat rigs and the paddles. And over here on Lake Huron, we're running a lot of Dodgers and spinning glows for lake trout and things like that. So they're a heavier tension release. And what I like about them is they got a long cable on them. So especially lake trout fishing, a lot of times we'll set them tight, and we'll set them so the fish won't trip the downrigger. You just wait for your rod tip. You see the rod start going with the fish on it, and then we can trip it ourselves. But we just let the fish start hitting that rod, and they start pulling on it. And every time they pull on it, they're setting that hook in deeper and deeper, and then we'll reach out and trip it and bring it in that way. Yeah, it's pretty much any body of water, anywhere where they're trolling, we've got something for them.
You were talking about, one of the advantages of planer boards is it gives you a bigger spread, lets you cover more water. So, what's the ideal distance to run the board out? There's two schools of thought. There's the Brad Dupuis school of thought, where you put it in a different time zone, and there's the Bruce DeShano school of thought, where you run them right next to the boat. What's the best way to do it, Nick?
I'm somewhere in the middle. It's however you like. My kind of what I always say is I like to run them as tight of the boat as I can get away with. There's the less you have to reel them in from the side, the less chance you have to worry about losing fish. It's quicker. There's less tangles. So if you're fishing cloudier, dirtier water and you can get away with running your boards 50 feet out to the side and right next to the boat, it's good to do it. Whatever you need to run to get them tangled up. If you're catching most of your fish on the outside boards and the depths are about the same, maybe start spreading them out a little wider. If all the fish are coming on the inside, you go ahead and tighten your spread up a little bit. That's the thing with the boards. There's no real right or wrong way other than you have to put the line in the front clip and it goes to your lure out the back clip. Other than that, there's so many ways of doing it. And you talk to 10 guides or pro fishermen or just fishermen, and you'll find half a dozen different ways that they run them. And the way they run them, if you ask them, that's the way you have to run them. So it's just try stuff out, whatever's comfortable, whatever works the best for you. And there's finding new ways to run stuff all the time.
I'm always fascinated by people by how people run your boards, because they come out of the package a certain way and they run great that way, and yet you can customize them for different styles of fishing. And I find it interesting how people tweak and fine tune a setup that's perfectly fine right from the factory.
Yep. Yeah. Like I said, it covers out of the package. It'll cover most of your fishing, especially with monofilament. I'll put a tattle flag on it, and then that's all I do with it. I leave the orange release on the front, the OR16, the red one with the pin in it, that stays on the back, and I don't mess with anything else with that. If I'm running braid, like for my trout and salmon lure, my trout and salmon rods that have backer on the steel lines and the lead core, I'll run the Sam's Pro release off of the bracket, and then I put the snapper release on the back. That way I don't have to worry about wrapping the OR16 with the braid. If you're running the OR16 with braid, you have to watch, and it could slip because that braid's so slippery and so thin and abrasive. Eventually that cuts that pin in the center of that pad. So the red one, I just make sure every time I just put a loop, you just wrap another loop-de-loop around one of the jaws, and that'll keep it from sliding down, especially now that we're tripping them more. Before, when we first started running the boards, we didn't know, we went from back in the old days with the old foam yellow birds with the wires in them. We'd always trip the boards and they'd slide down. You'd have a leader and you brought them in. And then they went from that to and PWT, the pros, they didn't like tripping them and letting it slide down, so we let them set. And for the longest time, that's how we ran it. And up to now that, especially, I think a lot of it changed in Michigan when we went to 3 rods. Now instead of just running 4 rods, 2 boards out each side, now we're running 3, 4, 5. I've seen 7, 8, and the only way to run that many boards out aside for me is to be able to trip them, because you don't want to, it's one thing to have to reel an inside board in, but when you got 4 boards inside, that's way too much to have to clear before you can bring your board in. So tripping them makes a difference. And then, but like I said, just make sure that you keep an eye on that OR16 on the back and make sure that it's not putting a little wear mark on the pin. And if it is, then you just wrap your line. Even some of these monofilaments with the new technology, and there's new slipperier, thinner monofilaments, just keep an eye on that. But that's all you have to do is just wrap it, and it works pretty slick. After a while, it gets pretty easy.
You put enough hours on those boards, and by the way, they last forever. But the clips, the pads on the clips are going to wear out a little bit, and then your line's going to start to slip through those.
Yep.
Can you replace that pad, or are you better off just replacing the whole clip?
Depends on what you want to do. We have a replacement pads. There's a ton of people that just replace the pads on it. You just have to be it's just a little tricky. I usually get a pair of like vice grips and clamp it open just enough to open it up and hold it open. And, you got to get in there with a little mini screwdriver or something and rip the old pad out and scrape everything off you can, and just use a little drop of super glue. Any kind of water-resistant super glue will hold the pad back in once you put it together. You just got to be careful when you do it. It's an easy way to shove a screwdriver through your hand trying to fidget with that little release or stuff like that. And then when you close it back up, you really got to be careful of those back pins that keep the line from going in too deep. Not the pin in the center, but the two little back ones. That when you close it back up, that they fit in the holes good. Otherwise, if they're offset, you might break a pin off if they get bent trying to put it back together.
That sounds like a lot of work. That's a lot of work. I'm just going to replace the pad, Nick, or the whole clip. The whole clip.
I'd rather you replace the release, but we do sell quite a bunch of replacement pads, and I think we have them in 12 packs or something like that.
Yeah.
So it all depends on how much you want to do.
Well, and it's a great wintertime project. I mean, we're not in winter, but you're looking ahead. It's a great thing just to do in the wintertime.
Yep.
So you started in the salmon business. You moved over you added the walleye business, been extremely popular there. You got into the crappie fishery down south. You got into the striper fishery down south. I mean, what's next for offshore?
The next newer thing has been the catfishing. It's really amazing when you look in the catfishing, especially down in some of those lakes in Alabama and the southern lakes where they're dragon baits, which is kind of like, it depends on where you're at. If you're in the Great Lakes, you're trolling. If you're crappie fishing, you're pulling. And if you're catfishing, you're probably dragging. It's all pretty much the same thing. I think they call it more dragging because you're really literally dragging the bottom with a heavy weight and usually a chunk of cut bait or of shad or something on the bottom for the catfish. And you're going real slow, half a mile an hour to maybe 0.8 of a mile an hour. So you're just going real slow. But you're putting the boards out and just dragging them along, and there's a lot of ways that they can use them. They'll anchor in the currents. A lot of river fishing there, so they'll anchor in the rivers and just let the current pull the board out to the side, and they'll slip back. A lot of times it's kind of weird. I was fishing with Chris Souders this spring, and we were fishing right at the foot of a dam. So the boat is moving backwards, but the boards are pointing forwards as we're trolling. We're slipping in the current. It's just a weird feeling to get used to when you're used to just going forward all the time. But you're looking at the bank, and the bank is going the other way, and the boards are still pointing out forward. So,
well, whatever works to catch fish.
Right, that's it. Whatever works.
Nick, always a pleasure. Congrats on the success of offshore. I appreciate you working with me. It was fun fishing with you guys, and we'll have to do it again soon.
Absolutely, and thank you for all your help. That's a big part of our success for sure.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Offshore Tackle, your leaders in trolling technology. That's the slogan, that's the motto, and it's there for a good reason. The website, offshoretackle.com. That's offshoretackle.com. And don't forget to check out the Offshore Tackle podcast, this latest one. By the time you hear this show, it'll be available. It features Mark Romanek of Fishing 411. That will be full of great information. Offshoretackle.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, Nick Green of MUCC, and then this week's Ask Avery segment. Still trying to figure out what we're going to cover this time around, but I think we can probably find something coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC. That is 1450 AM, 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY, 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Rapid River Knives. You know I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now. I don't even need to prove it to you anymore because you just know that's the case. I think a good knife is one of the most valuable tools that you can have. You can carry it, most of us can carry them everywhere we go every day. A good knife is a good tool. A great knife is a great tool, and it is an heirloom. Rapid River knives become heirlooms. You pass them down to generations. They're guaranteed for life. Go to their website, rapidriverknifeworks.us. You'll see what I mean, rapidriverknifeworks.us. Even better, if you have a chance, go to their showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River, and you will be so impressed. You can pick out a knife. You can have it engraved, and they'll sharpen it for the life of your knife. And again, the life of that knife is going to be probably longer than your life. Check them out online at rapidriverknifeworks.us, rapidriverknifeworks.us. Want to turn our attention now to the good folks at MUCC, Michigan United Conservation Clubs. MUCC.org is the website. Nick Green is their Chief Information Officer. And Nick is turning into a walleye fishing fiend. Nick, what's that all about?
Yeah, there's not enough trout in central Michigan, so I'm having to start to chase walleye. It's something new for me this summer. I've always kind of been a trout angler and a little bit of bluegill fishing, but it's fun to get out there and learn new species and kind of learn a whole new way to fish them. So, yeah, it's been a great summer, and I'm enjoying it.
I'm glad to hear that. On the work front, Nick, what's going on?
Yeah, so I think, most folks right now, the big thing on their mind is probably this Biden administration interpretation of funding for schools, and specifically funding of the National Archery in the Schools program and hunter safety education programs. MUCC is currently working to kind of first better understand what this means. So we think that this essentially means only the funding specifically for those programs, so not schools that receive that funding, which is a big delineation. But, regardless, this still has huge far-reaching impacts for the next generation. We at MUCC believe that hunter safety, believe that firearm handling, in a safe scenario with your parents, those are all important life skills that help us grow, help us be better humans, help us be educated voters in the long run. And this is pretty troubling. So it's something we're going to continue to work on with our national partners, continue to look at. I expect, we'll have probably some news on the web early next week. You can go to mucc.org to find that. And we'll probably be doing some more statements on that in the coming days as we learn more and as we really understand kind of how the Biden administration is going to answer this.
I usually think of MUCC as a state-level organization. I think about things coming out of Lansing. When things come out of Washington, is that a stretch for you guys? I mean, you've got such a small staff. How do you deal with national issues? You don't have people in Washington, or do you?
We are a part of a state action coalition that MUCC and the Tennessee Wildlife Federation and two other sister affiliates of a larger organization have joined and started, and our purpose there was to have a better pulse on what was going on in D.C. So we do pay a lobbyist in D.C. The issues we work on are very targeted. They have to have an impact on what we're doing here in the state in order for us to use our members' dollars kind of diligently and correctly. So this issue falls squarely within that. Withholding funding from our schools for national archery in the school programs or hunter safety is a big deal. And MUCC is going to continue to work on figuring it out.
I forgot where I was going, Nick. Don't get old, because sometimes your mind just leaves you for a minute there. MUCC, the organization, I talked about you guys being so small, but you're able to get so much done. That always impresses me.
Thanks. Yeah, we only have a staff of 9 here, sometimes 10, depending on the time of year. But, really the power is in what we're able to get done. And we've learned over the years how to be efficient, how to establish the right relationships. And at the end of the day, I was just writing something that kind of reminded me of this, but being transparent, we like to talk about things openly and honestly. And when you're able to do that, decision makers, policymakers appreciate that and want to come to the table with us.
I know where I wanted to go. I saw something online about the latest edition of Michigan Out of Doors magazine is coming out, and also a plug for our Wednesday Night Live coming up this Wednesday with Amy Trotter.
Absolutely, yeah. So Michigan Out of Doors is the publication for MUCC. Lots of great news, features, storytelling in there. Feel free to subscribe to that. It'll go to print next week. And then, if you got your questions, get those ready for Wednesday Night Live next week. That's been something that's been growing, that we've partnered with you on your Wednesday Night Live and including us once every so often, and it's been great.
All right, we'll look forward to that. Nick, have fun out there beating up the walleye, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Nick Green of MUCC, the website MUCC.org. That's MUCC.org. Make sure you check out that Michigan Out of Doors magazine. It's a very, very nice piece of, I was going to say a piece of print work, but it's a very, very nice publication. And, of course, Wednesday Night Live is always fun, especially fun when we have Amy Trotter of MUCC on with us. That'll be Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on my Facebook page, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, and you will also be able to see it on MUCC's social media outlets as well. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery question, and then we'll wrap it up in hour number 3 with Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots, coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. You can hear us. Oh, let's go to Port Huron, WPHM 1380 AM. And then let's go north of the bridge. Let's go to Escanaba, WCHT AM and FM, 600 AM, 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends from Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. The way the Ask Avery segment works is this is your chance to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you want me to respond to directly, or you can send me a question that you want me to forward on to somebody else, somebody at MUCC or DNR or someplace like that that maybe I have some access to that you don't. The best way to get those questions to me, send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. I have people send them to me through social media, messaging platforms. I usually see them. I have used those questions in the past, but I don't trust that's the best way. Again, the best way, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. This week's question is kind of a two-part thing. Talk about getting your captain's license. People ask me all the time, especially when they see me posting a lot of fishing pictures on my social media outlets. Hey, Avery, I like your pictures. Looks like fun. I'd like to book a trip with you. Well, you can't. I am a licensed charter captain, but I don't run charters. I don't run paid charters. I got my captain's license to keep everything above board and keep it legit when I do these charity charters. I get involved with several different groups to raise funds for their cause, including my church, Trinity Monitor. And I offer up my services for a day on the water, either a fishing trip or a river cruise. And I enjoy those. Those are a lot of fun. And we've raised a fair amount of money this summer just from those. Even though I am licensed by the Coast Guard to run paid charters, I choose not to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't think I'm a good enough fisherman. But the main reason is I don't think it would be right for me to go into competition, which is what it would be, with a lot of my friends who are better fishermen and who are licensed captains who do it for a living. Because to be honest with you, because I have some notoriety and a fairly high profile, people want to book trips with me just because they see me online or they hear me on the air. I don't want to take those trips away from my buddies. I use these, I don't want to use, use is a bad word. I rely on my charter captain buddies for information. Hey, where are you getting fish? What are they hitting on right now? They're a resource to me. Plus, I love having them on the radio show and the different podcasts. It just wouldn't sit right with me to try to take advantage of my situation and take trips away from somebody else who's doing it for a living. It just wouldn't feel right, and I don't think it's the right move for me. So the only way to get a trip with me is through one of these charity events that I work with. Now, the process of getting your license, I got mine through Great Lakes Charter Training. At the time was owned by Captain Mel Stackpool. It's a pretty intense process. If I remember right, it was like 8 or 9 days, all day long, being in class, and then you had to take the Coast Guard exam and jump through a whole bunch of paperwork. It was not easy. But you know what? It shouldn't be an easy process. If you're going to be licensed to take people out in the water, I think it should be a pretty rigorous process, and you should have to jump through some hoops so that only the people who are really committed to wanting to do it end up going through the process. Captain Mel Stackpool has since retired. There is no more Great Lakes charter training. However, one of his guys who used to teach his classes, Captain John Littlefield, who is actually the guy who taught my class, and this is not a secret. John has made this public. He's in the process of buying that business and setting up his own business to train people to become charter captains. I don't know what John is going to call that. He says he will keep me informed. He's getting very close. He has the approval from the Coast Guard to do his towing classes, but he doesn't have the approval from the Coast Guard to do his charter captain's classes. And one of the cool things about this is there used to be an old license called a six-pack. John's classes go beyond that. So it's based on the tonnage of the vessel that you're going to be running, and there is no six-pack when you get a class or get a license through John Littlefield. So that's the story there. I appreciate it when people reach out and say, I want to go fishing with you. Again, the only way to go fishing with me is to bid on one of these charity events. And, I don't see that changing. I don't see myself going into the business of running charters for the reasons I have stated. And I get a thanks to the good folks at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. You can check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in our final hour this week, which is hour number 3, we're going to be talking about food plots. August is the time to get your fall food plots in. We've had some rain. Conditions, I think, are looking pretty good. Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots will join me to talk about that. And then wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I want to find out, did he cook up the gar pike that we caught fishing on Saginaw Bay last week? And how did that thing taste? Coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Offshore Tackle, Garber Chevrolet, Rapid River Knife Works, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on this first weekend in August. How did it get to be August already? What does that mean? Well, it means summertime is slipping away. That's what it means. But it also means, I don't know, it'll mean different things for different families. Maybe it's time to get some camping in. Maybe it's time to get over to Lake Michigan, fish some salmon. Maybe it's time to take that trip to the UP. Maybe it's time to get serious about your food plots. Food plotting is a big, big deal in Michigan these days. Ever since the DNR banned baiting in the Lower Peninsula, food plots have been a real good option, and a lot of people, a lot of companies have jumped on the bandwagon. Some of them better than others. I like Michigan-based Killer Food Plots. The guys at Killer Food Plots know what they're talking about. They're hard workers. They are committed to education. They are committed to improving your habitat. Last time I talked with Rich Chrzan, we were in the middle of a drought. So he suggested at the time, he said, why don't you just hold off a few weeks and wait until August? Well, now it's August. We've had some rain, and I'm thinking things are ready to rock. Rich is back with us on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rich, always a pleasure. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little busy, but real good. Mike, how are you?
Just a little busy, Rich?
Well, no, a lot busy, Mike. I mean, I had to scramble home today just so I could have signal. So, we were working at a job a couple hours up north doing the old Michigan dirty sand, right? But, I mean, it's go time this month. It's definitely full for me. I will be busy right up till the end of it, and then probably some in September because you get the procrastinators that want something drilled in, and we can still drill in winter oats and get a good food plot established in September yet. So, but no, it's been really fortunate for rain lately down here. Actually, everywhere in Michigan's been getting some rain. Like the job I was doing just yesterday up north, that was the Michigan dirty sand, but the water content in the soil was really high. I mean, it was almost like mud in some spots. So once we turned it and packed it and let it set overnight, it was perfect for drilling yesterday morning. So I'm real happy, real excited about how that one's going to turn out. He wanted all Carnage Braskas and Crop Duster. We did that for him last year, and those two products were gangbusters for him. So, and being out there, we got to see some pretty nice bucks on that property. I was pretty excited for them. And they come right out while we're doing the food plots. Tractors don't bother those deer at all. They come right out, check out what you're doing, and just start milling around. So it's pretty exciting to watch.
Well, knowing how busy you are, Rich, I really appreciate your time. You used the term that dirty Michigan sand. I've heard that before, but what do you mean by that?
So, you get up north, and the only thing growing up there is pine trees and ferns, right? Because there's more sand in the dirt than there is the actual dirt. So we call it Michigan dirty sand. It's a great filter, right? So you get a hard rain, everything just washes right through. But like this property we've been doing, we've actually established a great pH level over the past 4 or 5 years. Believe it or not, we've dumped a ton of organic matter back in it by using oats, cereal rye, and I'm fortunate enough now to where I can just turn the top 2 inches of that, pack it, and seed it, and then next year I should be able to no-till. That's pretty exciting. No-till saves a lot of time, and it's very productive. So, if you no-till, you're not breaking up that organic matter that you're putting back into the ground. You're letting the ground break it up slowly and using it for nutrients and building that soil back up. If you throw your tiller 6-8 inches in the ground and you turn that sand back in and get all that organic matter back down below the root base, it's not doing you any good. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited about the way this one's turning out. It's a long-time job, great people to work for. There's a lot of great people in this industry, right? I mean, people just want to go out and have fun doing food plots, and that's very exciting for me to either do them for them or to teach them the proper ways and the methods to do it. My phone blows up. I bet my tractor starter probably had to roll over 100 times yesterday just because people are calling and wanting to know what's going on and the product. And yeah, I'll be ready for bow season.
I bet you will. I bet you will. I find it interesting. You say, obviously there's an end goal here, right? You want to improve habitat. You want to keep wildlife, in particular deer, on your property longer and keep them healthier. But the process of putting in food plots has become part of the hunting experience itself too, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. It's a lot of work, but man, it's so gratifying to watch something come out of the ground and attract them deer. And I think you made the comment about keeping them on your property, right? Watching them grow up. We don't have a big tract property where we live, but we are able to watch the bucks grow. Over the last 3 years, we've been watching a couple of the same bucks, and it's really nice. It's really neat to see that happen. The problem with out here in my property is I kind of turned it into a fawning zone. And bucks don't hang out with the does and the fawns because the does are, they're dominant. They're going to run them off. So we don't really see any bucks this time of year. We'll see them early spring, and then come August, September, they'll start rolling back in when they start hard horning. So that's really interesting to me to know that we've got great buck potential out here, but we don't see them almost all summer long. So, and being that I'm busy, I don't have a camera one out right now. I mean, I'm so far behind the 8 ball on that. It's ridiculous. But I guess this year might be one of those years like I did it back when I was 12 years old. You just go out and see what's out there in person, But
and wouldn't that actually be kind of cool, too?
It really would. I mean, I was talking to a guy the other day. I says, what cameras do? They make you hate work. Because you're sitting at work and your cell camera's going off, right? And that buck you've been after for a month is standing right in front of your stand at 20 yards. Well, now what? Now you're staring at your phone and you're mad at work. Your productivity is probably going down. So yeah, there's some pros and cons of them cameras. I hunt a piece of property I don't use a camera on, so it is kind of exciting to see that.
How much land do you have to have, Rich, to put in food plots? I mean, do we have to have 100 acres to make this work? Absolutely not.
You can own 3 acres of property and do 1 acre to a half acre of a food plot that is not in the area. And if you can attract them deer, they'll come to something that's not in the area. There's plenty of beans and plenty of corn, especially where I live. It's an ag area. So, they're not really, you're not going to bring them to a half acre cornfield when they're standing in 200 acres and another 100 yards away. I know a gentleman that's got literally 3 acres of property, does a half acre of food plots surrounded by farm fields, and he shoots one of the biggest bucks every year in that area because he's the only, he was the only one with a food plot in that area, but now I've got some jobs out there, so I don't know if he's going to like me or not.
But that's interesting, though, because people, I've heard this a bunch of times. Why do I need a food plot? I'm surrounded by soybeans and corn.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're surrounded by soybeans and corn, but when you're doing food plots, we go deep into it, right? It's about attracting deer. Absolutely. People want to attract a deer. They want to see them. But for me, and for us, it's about building the health of the deer herd, right? Building that body of that buck and having that buck stay healthy 365 days a year is going to produce a much bigger rack, a much healthier deer, because they're not struggling through the spring and through the winter trying to build their body, because all their protein and nutrients they take in is going to go directly to their body, their muscle mass, before it goes to their horn. So if you can establish the right food plots, the right cereal grains, the right time of year, clovers and chicories, they have that protein available 365 days a year. It's learned living. If you have an ice cream shop that you love, you go to that ice cream shop all the time, you're a frequent flyer, right? Well, deer are the same way. If you put in Braskas and they love them Braskas, they're going to come back. They're going to come back and they'll start living closer, if not on your property. The longer you keep them on your property, the less chance your neighbor's going to get them. That's everybody's goal.
Is there a magic size or shape for a food plot?
So no, not really. I've done food plots I just went up north a couple of weeks ago and did a couple he had 6 food plots. A couple of them were like 8,500 square foot. I mean, that's pretty small, right? There's houses that are bigger than that. But you plant it, and they're called kill spots, and they're in the middle of the woods. They're in the middle of the travel corridors. So they can come through there. They can sneak through the woods. They can get into there just before dark, and you can get your chance at that big buck. If you're going to do like a square or rectangle food plot, screening is a great thing. Too late in the season to do that. But otherwise, if you're doing something, do an hourglass. If you're in the woods, do an hourglass or an L, like one of them fairways that on a golf course that goes way to the right that I can only hit those ones because I have such a terrible flight.
I'm with you. Hey, listen, Rich, hang tight. We'll follow up on this. We're talking with Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots. The website is killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com. Now is the time to get serious about your food plots. Rich has a lot of great advice, and I will find out what that is after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. You know, you can hear the show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WMLQ in Manistee, that's 97.7 FM. Also WIOS in Tawas, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And in Traverse City, it's WTCM 580 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry for so many years. In fact, more than 3/4 of a century. They continue today to come up with great products, new manufacturing processes. And I'm talking for target archers and bow hunters alike. As you are getting your rig put together, your bow hunting setup for this fall, I would strongly encourage you to check out Boning products. I mean, after all, Michigan-based company, been doing it since, well, Roland Boning, who started the company, was making products for Fred Bear. That's how far back the company goes. Check them out online at boning.com. That's BOHNING.com, boning.com. While you are online, I would ask you to check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head over to KillerFoodPlots.com. KillerFoodPlots.com, the website, obviously, of Michigan-based Killer Food Plots. Rich Chrzan, the man at the helm of Killer Food Plots, and with me now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Rich, you said something just before the break about it's too late to put in screening plants, screening seeds at this point. Where are we in the food plot timetable? Are we in a good spot right now? Are we behind the 8 ball already, or are we good?
No, I mean, right now is perfect time. So you can put in my go-to are brassicas. We have Carnage brassicas and we have White Rage, and those are real popular to put in right now because they reach maturity in about between 30 and 45 days. They grow really fast, and it just gives a ton of food, ton of groceries for the deer out there between the vegetation and the bulbs that it's putting in the ground and the turnips, radishes. They love radishes. I've been really successful in mid-Michigan here to plant as late as August 19th and still have 2 foot of growth by like the 23rd of October. And I got some pretty sweet pictures of that year. It turned out really well. With White Rage, it's the same thing. The deer just love it. It's great for late season because once it gets cold, they love the vegetation. They love the bulbs that are in the ground. They just come in and they pound it. They'll turn 3/4 of an acre out here at my house. They'll turn 3/4 of an acre of Carnage brassicas into dirt by December, which is great, right? Because then frost season comes and I want a frost seed. I have a blank canvas because they literally pulled all the bulbs out of the ground, ate all the vegetation, and I have a blank canvas. It works out really well. Allows me to rotate crops in there and do chicory and do clover real early in the spring during that frost seed time and have that established for me come later on in the summer. Gives them, the fawns, a nice new food source so they can learn how to eat while they're getting a ton of protein and a ton of nutrients out of that clover. Like I said, we kind of made ours a fawning area. So I experimented with some switchgrass this year, a new kind, and put it next to the food plot. And the goal is that they're going to fawn out there next spring, and the does can walk out and they can have food. And then when the fawns get on their feet, they can step right out of the security of the switchgrass. They can mill around a little bit and step right back in. It's a great thing. Like I said earlier, though, you're not going to see very many bucks in the middle of the summer if you're doing that. The does will chase them off the fawns. So
when I hear you talk about this all, Rich, it makes me realize this is not a haphazard process. There's a method to your madness.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. Yep, to my madness. It seems like madness a lot, but
well, I mean that with all due respect. You know that.
No, yeah, oh yeah, no, absolutely, Mike. It's this time of year. It's just it's crazy. Go. But I like to, like I say, I'm experimenting, right? So I want to know what works, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to set out my office window right here and watch deer in the back field, so I can watch and learn how they react to different things I'm doing, like the switch grasses, and then I can help people implement that, and I can be sure of what I'm trying to do for them. We've all failed at food plots. If you haven't, well, I'd like to talk to you and know how you've done it every time, because Mother Nature usually gets in there and gets you at least once out of a couple of years. But yeah, so like I say, I like to do as much research and development, so I have that knowledge to pass on to people. It's real important for people to be successful, whether it's them doing it all by themselves or, like you said earlier, making a family thing out of it. Like the job I just did, my daughter's fiance, I guess that's the term now, not boyfriend, the fiance. He goes up with me and he helps me on those long jobs, and he takes time off from work and doesn't expect anything.
Nice.
And we have a good time doing it together, because we work well together. So it's really fun. August is really fun for me. As I'm pulling my hair out and my face is dripping mud because I'm sweating so hard, people probably think that doesn't look like fun, but there's a smile under there somewhere. So at the end of the day, I can do that.
It's got to be rewarding for people, too, who put in their own food plot to go back there 6 weeks, 2 months later and shoot a nice buck out of what they've done.
Oh, absolutely. In pictures that people send me, I live for that, especially that first few weeks of October, November. Right now I have people sending me pictures. They just planted deep woods. 2 days later, they went out there and it's already popping out of the ground. They had some pretty ideal situations for weather. They put the seed in, fertilized, and it rained. You can't usually buy weather like that when you're doing food plots. But so yeah, it's pretty exciting. You can just hear the excitement in people's voice when you're talking to them, or even in a text. When they send you a picture, you can't really hear it, but you can just tell the excitement that's going on when they're being successful. So those are the great stories I love to share. I encourage people to send me those pictures, and I may ask if I could share it on Facebook, right? Because some of these pictures are pretty phenomenal. You mentioned
earlier you mentioned mid-Michigan. How far do you travel to do your work?
Oh, Mike, I've been really fortunate to stay mostly in Michigan the last couple of years, but back in the day, we've done Ohio, Colorado, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas. I'm 7 different states we've traveled to, so I am not scared to go anywhere. If I can help somebody out, whether it's a land consult, just going down and looking at the property and giving them a game plan. I do that for some customers where I just manage their property, right? I go and we discuss what I think would be better and what they're looking to do, and then we implement that. And throughout the season, they contact me and they use my products, and we work through it together, and they do it themselves. That's pretty rewarding for everybody.
So you cover the whole state, though? You do cover the whole state of Michigan?
Oh, yeah. I do. I'll go anywhere. I'll go to the UP. I haven't had to go to the UP yet. I love the UP personally. So if somebody wants to give me an opportunity to go to the UP, give me a call.
That's a UP would be a challenge for a food plot, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it can be. I actually had a customer send me a picture Monday. He put in Carnage brassicas, and he's struggled, and he found out that he needs to plant his brassicas earlier in the UP, like towards the beginning of July. And he sent me a picture, and they're 2 foot out of the ground. And I'm like, you are going to have some of the happiest Upper Peninsula deer in that entire area. Because he's just put something in there, and it's come out of the ground so nicely. The deer don't have anything like that in that area, right? So I find it real hard to believe that they're not going to be able to harvest a decent buck for their area. They usually do, but it's been getting better the last couple of years, they said. So
what do you do? Do you sell seeds to people to put in their own, or do you put in food plots for them? And what's the scope of what you offer, Rich?
The scope of what I offer is everything from I will get in contact with a timber manager if you would like your woods timbered, select cut. I have 11 different blends of our own Killer Food Plot seed that I sell online at killerfoodplot.com. I sell it at Family Farm and Home. It's in those retail stores. Then I am a turnkey food plot installer. From killing it off to drill seeding it, or, if it's a small enough one, I even still do the old broadcast seeder, throw the old bag seeder over the shoulder and do that 3-mile-an-hour walk. Really get the old glutes hurting the next day, but it's rewarding. But yeah, we do it all. I mean, if I talk to people on the phone, I do land consults, half-day consults, full-day consults. I actually will go out on property and help people construct deer bedding, doe bedding, buck bedding, identifying community licking branches, making licking branches. I try to do the entire spectrum of hunting. I want to give as much availability to the knowledge that I have, and I'm always learning too, right? I'm always online, always checking things out. I want to be correcting what I'm telling people. So yeah, we're turnkey everything.
And I know from talking with you in the past, all this whole scenario here starts with one simple thing called a soil sample.
Oh yeah, the soil sample, the foundation of everything. Best $20 you're going to ever spend. Probably the cheapest part of the food plot too, to be honest with you. Because with those soil samples, you know what you need. You could either be throwing $100 at something that didn't need it, or you're throwing $100 at something that needed $500, and you're not going to achieve anything.
So is food plotting expensive? Because I'm starting to hear some numbers add up here.
Yeah, it can be expensive. Yes, I mean just to amend the soil, you can work around throwing a whole bunch of fertilizer and stuff in there by different seeds, like our lethal winter oats. If you spill that on the tractor tire and you get a heavy dew and it sets there overnight, I believe it would probably sprout right there on the tire. So, there's those things that you can do to build soils. We've discussed before that you may not be able to plant exactly what you want the first year or two. You go in and you plant something that builds the soil, and you do soil sample every year, and you can see where you're going and what direction, document it and see the direction you're going. And maybe you need a little more potash the next year, or you need some ag line put in there. But your soil sample will definitely tell you every year for $22 every year. It's going to tell you what you need, exactly what you need, so you can be successful when you put that food plot in. Nobody wants to throw all that money at it. It's like you're just throwing the money in the toilet and flushing it if it doesn't work. So.
Well, Rich, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. I always learn a lot. I'm going to send people to your website, killerfoodplots.com. So why don't you take a breath, have some lunch, and relax for a few minutes before you head back out this afternoon?
It's
not going to happen, is it? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think I'm going to grab a sandwich on my way out the door and eat it while I'm working. So.
All right, Rich, appreciate your time. We'll talk again soon. That's Rich Chrzan of Killer Food Plots, the website killerfoodplots.com, killerfoodplots.com. Right now is the time. If you're going to put in food plots for this fall, right now is the time. We've had some rain. It's the perfect time of year. Time to take advantage of what Mother Nature has graciously offered this last couple of weeks. We'll take a break. Lots more coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show on more than 30 stations across the great state of Michigan, including WKBZ in Muskegon, that's 1090 AM. WTIQ in Manistee, that's 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. And WSGW in Saginaw, that is News Radio 790 and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I'm in here with Charlie Root. Now, Charlie, you and I both know that it hasn't been a perfect show. I'm just going to leave it at that. Charlie recovered very well. And even with a very minor foible, and I screw up every show, so I'm not ragging on Charlie. I'm not criticizing at all, because we all do it. There's still people out there waiting to say hi to Charlie. We had a little rain earlier. I thought that was going to keep the crowd down, but now the sun is shining, and there are families, several of them out there, chanting, Charlie, Charlie, Charlie. And there is not one pitchfork or shovel in the whole group, so I think they're all here to celebrate you, Charlie. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by the good folks at Reeder Landscaping. Reeder can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. You know, I talk a lot about the projects that the folks from Reeder can do, and they are excellent. They are outstanding at that, you know, creating that outdoor getaway in your backyard that I talk about so much. And they're wonderful at that. But also, let's talk about other things. Let's talk about maintenance. Let's talk about mowing. Maybe you have had enough mowing for the summer, and you say, I don't want to do it anymore. Well, the folks from Reeder can take care of that for the rest of the summer. They can also go into the fall. They can do your fall cleanup. They can take care of the leaves. They can cut down the shrubs. They can trim your trees. And then what about closing out the sprinkler system? You know, it's not going to be that much longer, and you're going to have to do that. Well, the folks from Reeder can take care of that, too. And let's go out one more season. I hate to look at that season where the white stuff is on the ground, but why shovel your snow? I mean, if you want to do it, fine. But the folks from Reeder can take care of it for your residents and your commercial properties as well. All of those services and more from Reeder Landscaping. Check them out online at reederlandscaping.com. That's reederlandscaping.com. You know, looking back on this week's show, I love to do this. To be able to talk with what I think are interesting people about what I think are interesting topics, and I hope you share those, you know, that impression of the show. And that's one advantage for being around for a while. I know a lot of people, and I know people who know people. So, for example, Devin LaFond in the first hour, the guy who unfortunately lost one of his bear dogs to a wolf attack. I don't know Devin. I have corresponded with him online. I didn't have a phone number for him, but I put a little post on Facebook. Hey, Devin LaFond, I'm looking for you. If you are on here, please contact me, or if anybody knows how to get in touch with Devin, please let me know. Boom, 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 boom. There's his phone number, and then and private messages. And then Devin came on and said, hey, Mike, I'm going to send you a private message. You know, how cool is that? As much as, you know, I'm a broadcast guy. Those are my roots. Television and radio, that's what the bulk of my career has been in. But these days, social media I find fascinating. I find it frustrating, I will admit. Sometimes it's more anti-social media than social media. But if you approach it in the right way and you set some guidelines and some expectations, like by now people know they don't drop an F-bomb on my page, or I delete it and I ban them. I mean, you know, so set some expectations, make it a family-friendly place. I don't want anything on my social media outlets that I wouldn't want my grandkids to see, you know, or your kids to see. It is a pretty cool way to communicate, exchange ideas. You know, some of the pages I follow, like there's a Saginaw Bay fishing page that is just filled with great information and fishing reports. And, you know, I do a lot of online stuff. I do a lot of, you know, like the Wednesday night lives. If you haven't checked those out, I would encourage you to do so. Every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, I do about a 45-minute live. I'm going to call it a broadcast, but it's a streaming event. It's streamed. It's not broadcast. I put those out on my Facebook page, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Still haven't figured out a way to put them on Instagram, but I haven't given up yet. And it gives us a chance to interact. As much as I love the radio show, it's kind of a one-way communication, right? It's me or me and my guests. It doesn't really give you a chance to interact directly in the conversation. That's why I like the online stuff. Both my Wednesday night lives and my behind the mics every Wednesday morning at 8:45, we can have a conversation. You can chime in. You know, people do that throughout the entire show. It's a live stream. I call it a show. So I would encourage you every Wednesday morning at 8:45 and every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Check those out. This week's Wednesday night live, Wednesday night at 7, will feature Amy Trotter of MUCC. It's your chance to pose a question to the executive director of MUCC. How often are you going to get a chance to do that? So I think it's pretty exciting the way communication and social media and media in general is these days. I've tried to evolve as media has changed and evolved to try to stay relevant. And, so far it's worked out, at least to some degree. We will take a break here at the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, check in with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I can't wait to find out what Dave did with the bass, the catfish, the sheephead, and especially the gar that he caught while fishing with me on Saginaw Bay last week. That's coming up right here on Outdoor Magazine. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. My name is Mike Avery. So glad to have you along with us. I was also so glad to be able to get on the water just a few days ago with Art Lewis of WSGW and then my good friend, wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know if Dave and I have ever fished together. We've talked about it a bunch of times, but to be able to have the opportunity to get out there, catch some fish, and have some fun was wonderful. Dave's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. David, welcome back. Did you have as much fun out there as I did?
Well, skipper extraordinaire, heck yeah. I had a ball. I learned a lot from you, that's for sure.
That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had a ball. And speaking of that gar pike, I cut the head off with the hacks on the tail, and I tried to fillet it out, and the scales were so tough I couldn't even do anything with it. I tried my damnedest. I'm telling you what.
We finally found a critter that beat Dixie Dave.
It beat me right bad. I know I did my very best so that I could talk about it, brag about it, but it just didn't work.
Oh, I don't think I've ever had a gar pike hit. Well, I have, but it's only the second time I've ever had a gar hit a trolled crankbait like that.
They're pretty aggressive little fish, obviously.
Yeah. What about the sheephead? What'd you do with that?
Ate them.
Just
I mixed it in with the walleye. What we did is we had a fish fry. I invited for Roger, my brother-in-law, and Carlene. They came, and then we had friends, Lynn and Terry, that came over for the fish fry. We had it the same night, and I mixed it in, and nobody knew the difference between walleye and the sheephead and the bass. I put the bass in there too.
Really? What about the
Everything
catfish? What about the catfish?
Yep, I ate one piece, and my good buddy there, Terry, he ate the other fillet. And he loved it. He loves catfish anyways. And he said, we Cajuned him up a little bit, because I like a little spicy, and so does Terry.
Oh.
Everything was so good, Michael. Thank you. I had a ball of fish. I've done a lot of things with Art Lewis over the years, but fishing was a brand new experience. He had a great time, I'm sure.
Well, he did, and part of the fun there was, Dave, is he's not a fisherman. He hadn't done it before. He's one of those guys who's always open to new experiences, but to be able to share that with him and with you, I mean, you fished a lot before. We haven't fished together, but you fished a lot before, so you knew what to expect. Art had no idea what to expect.
Right. Yep. It was pretty cool watching him. He took to it like a duck to water.
He did. He certainly did.
He kept watching the tattle flag. I think that was falling back.
I know. No, Art, that's just a weed. Relax.
That was so cool. I thank you, Mike. I couldn't have fished with a better guy.
No, it was.
Two really good friends.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I was talking about that earlier. The fact that, you can share an experience like that with a family or good friends. It just makes it all the better.
It was.
I am disappointed you weren't able to whack up that gar pike, though. I thought for sure you were going to find a way to do that.
I did my best. I'm telling you what. I cut the head off with a hacksaw.
Probably dulled the hacksaw blade.
My God, them scales were just unreal.
But you said that you have eaten the big alligator gar in the past.
Right. I didn't clean it. So a friend of mine that we were with, he cleaned it. And I don't know how he did it, but it was probably about as big around as your calf, you know.
Oh,
it was
yeah,
about
yeah,
a 30 pound fish. And so there was a lot of meat on it. And I filleted it out. He gave me a nice big chunk, and I filleted it out. And it was snow white, the meat.
So were you even able to get to the meat to see what it looked like on this scar pike?
Just after I cut the head off, look it down in like it, you know, right where the head.
Was it a white meat?
Yeah. Yep.
Man.
The sheephead is a white meat too. It's actually whiter, you know, where walleye is pink, a little bit pinkish white, and the sheephead is snow white.
So did you just take those like the back straps off the sheephead that I've heard you talk about before? How'd you cook that up?
No, I filleted it right out, and then I skinned it kind of deep because they have a layer of red meat right underneath the skin, and I got rid of all of that, and then we cooked it up just like the walleye. We Cajuned it up a little bit, and the catfish we Cajuned up, and nobody knew the difference.
No kidding.
Nobody could tell the difference.
Well, I might have been missing a lot of good eating because I've thrown back an awful lot of sheephead over the years.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Well, they're good. I'm telling you what, if you mix them in with walleye, nobody knows the difference.
Well, what about the bass, that smallmouth? They could certainly tell that wasn't a walleye, no?
By the time I filleted it out and I cut it in half, you know, each fillet in half, and I made this same size pieces of the walleye, nobody knew the difference. I did because we got a couple of small deep fryers.
Because you knew.
Fried anything. And I knew what it was. I was putting it on the serving platter, and I never said nothing to nobody about what we had.
Well, it was a lot of fun, Dave. I appreciate your friendship and the time on the water, and hearing the stories about how you cooked that up made it all worthwhile. We'll talk again next week, and hopefully we'll get a chance to go fishing again soon.
I would love that, Michael. I would drop whatever I'm doing.
Well, you're an old retired guy. You don't have anything else going on anyway, so that's not much of a sacrifice. All right, that's a jab. All right, I got to let you go. Wild Game Chef Extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Appreciate him joining us this week on the Outdoor Magazine Show, and you as well. We'll talk to you next week right here on Outdoor Magazine.